Imagine that your every word, every joke online, and even your personal opinion is not your property, but a rented apartment from which you can be evicted at any moment with a single call from above. We are starting this journey with official recognition, which was supposed to make global headlines, but instead is slowly drowning in information noise. On August 26, 2000, Mark Elliott Zuckerberg, the man who controls the digital mirrors of our reality, sent a letter to the Judiciary Committee of the U.S. House of Representatives. In this document, he openly confirmed that senior Biden administration officials, including White House staff, had been exerting unprecedented pressure on the Mets teams for months. The goal was simple and cynical: to censor coronavirus-related content. But the most frightening thing here is not the fact of moderation itself, but the fact that not only medical fakes fell under the knife, but also humor, satire, and opinions that did not fit into the official agenda. A few months later, in January 2000, Zuckerberg went even further in Joe Rogan's podcast, revealing the details of these friendly visits. Officials literally shouted at the company's employees, demanding to delete what, according to Mark himself, was actually true. When you hear the word moderation, you imagine protection from chaos. But the reality described by Zuckerberg is more like a digital inquisition. The administration pressured the Met to remove any mention of vaccine side effects, even if these findings were supported by scientific research. The logic of the authorities was simple. Any doubt is a threat to the vaccination program, which means the doubt must be eliminated. This is a classic example of how the state machine sacrifices transparency for the sake of the common good that it defines itself. But Zuckerberg emphasized a crucial detail. Censorship was not limited to medical facts. It is spread to scientific discussions about the origin of the virus and the safety of medicines. When the state starts dictating to a private company which humor is acceptable and which is dangerous, we cross the line between democracy and authoritarian control. This creates a precedent in which any idea objectionable to the current administration can be erased from the public space with a single phone call, and you won't even know that your opinion has been filtered out. This virus of control knows no borders, and if you think it's only an American problem, look at the UK. Freedom of speech has long been an absolute value there, but has turned into a legal minefield. Article 127 of the Communications Act of 2003 and the Malicious Communications Act of 11988 allow thousands of people to be arrested annually for online posts that bureaucrats have deemed extremely offensive or alarming. The concepts are so vague that everything falls under the article, from retweeting a cartoon to expressing political discontent. In the year 2023, Britain accepted the Law on Internet Security, which has given Ofcom enormous powers. Now they can force platforms to remove even legal but harmful content. This creates an atmosphere of total suspicion and self-censorship. People start deleting their thoughts even before publication, fearing that their digital footprint will lead the police to them. Freedom does not die to the clang of swords, but to the soft tapping of keys by people who have begun to fear their own thoughts in a world where insulting a neighbor becomes a criminal offense. The European Union has gone even further by creating one of the most sophisticated censorship systems in the Western world through the Digital Services Act. Under the guise of fighting disinformation and hate speech, there is a mechanism for suppressing political dissent. The most striking example of this act was the shadow banning of posts in support of Palestine on Instagram, blocking information about events that require maximum publicity. But the most insidious part of this law is its global reach. Platforms like Facebook or YouTube cannot create separate rules just for Europe without risking billions in fines. As a result, the standards of Brussels are imposed on users in the USA, Asia, and Africa. If a European official decides that your criticism of social policy is disinformation, your voice will be muted around the world. We voluntarily give the right to the truth to a group of unelected bureaucrats, forgetting that without the opportunity to openly make mistakes and argue, society loses its immunity to tyranny. When we can't trust information, the integrity of a free society begins to crack at the seams, and the only question is whether we'll notice it before it's too late. To understand what this path leads to, you need to look into the dark past of the special services. From 1956 to 1971, the FBI conducted a secret program called COINTELPRO, a system of internal surveillance and sabotage against its own citizens. Officially, the targets were the Communists and the Ku Klux Klan, but in reality, everyone who threatened the interests of the elites fell under the ice rink: socialists, anti-war activists, and civil rights activists. The FBI wasn't just watching. They actively destroyed lives by using forged documents, false media reports, anonymous harassment, and psychological warfare. It was a coordinated campaign to preserve the existing structures of power through the destruction of the opposition. COINTELPRO's methods were so dirty that even today many documents remain classified. Those in power always act in the shadows, manipulating society through the sidelines in order to direct the world in the direction they need. And if you think these methods are a thing of the past, remember how quickly modern algorithms can turn anyone into a digital outcast, using the same principles of discrediting, only at higher speeds. The height of COINTELPRO's brutality was the campaign against Martin Luther King Jr. Since 1963, the FBI had been listening to his hotel rooms and private conversations, compiling a dossier aimed at completely destroying his reputation. In November 1964, King received an anonymous package with audio recordings of his personal life and a letter that went down in history as a suicide letter. The text was full of hate. "You're finished. You are a dirty, abnormal animal. There's only one thing left for you to do. You only have 34 days." This was not the initiative of an ordinary agent. The operation was supervised by FBI Deputy Director William Sullivan with the direct approval of J. Edgar Hoover. The system tried to force the leader of the civil rights movement to take his own life because his ideas of equality threatened the status quo. The most amazing thing is that these records were sealed in the National Archives until the year 2027. Only then will we know the full depth of this betrayal. But King was not the only one. The FBI literally tore the Black Panther Party apart, using frontmen to incite internal conflicts, which eventually led to the murder of Fred Hampton in 1969.
The FBI's surveillance knew no boundaries and moral barriers. Evelyn Sell, an ordinary member of the Socialist Workers' Party, found out decades later that the Secret Services had been opening her mail, tapping her phones, and following her for 30 years. Her file consisted of 10,000 pages, a life story from the age of 19 to 50, documented by the state as the story of a potential criminal. And even if you don't share her views, the precedent itself is terrifying. The system can be armed against anyone with any belief system. The COINTELPRO program was officially shut down only in 1971, when activists broke into the FBI office and stole secret documents, handing them over to the press. But accountability never came. No one was punished for the broken destinies and deaths, and the intelligence agencies have only grown in strength and budgets since then. Today, the psychological trauma of constant surveillance forces citizens to engage in self-censorship. They bite their tongues and delete posts, doing the police's work for her. A free society does not die from bonfires of books, but from the silence of people who have begun to fear their own thoughts. In an ideal world, elected representatives should be accountable to the voters. But in our reality, they are accountable to their donors. The most striking example is the activities of AIPAC, the Committee for Relations with Israel. In 2000, this organization, through its super PACs, poured almost $127 million into financing candidates. This is not just lobbying. It is a systematic change in the DNA of American foreign policy. John F. Kennedy and his brother Robert once saw AIPAC's predecessor as a direct threat to democracy by demanding registration as foreign agents. But after the assassination of Kennedy, this requirement was withdrawn, and today the organization operates without the transparency that the president insisted on. AIPAC's money is being used to suppress those Democrats who criticize the military actions and Netanyahu's policies. As a result, despite the fact that support for Israel among Democratic voters has dropped to a critical 8%, Congress continues to provide almost unanimous support. This creates parallel universes, where the voice of the people is drowned out by the clink of coins. When state institutions and people exist in such different dimensions, outrage becomes inevitable. Huge checks from billionaires, from tech giants and pharmaceutical companies buy the entire system, ensuring that no matter which party controls Congress, the interests of donors will remain a priority. This is not just corruption, it is a parasitic connection that undermines the foundations of the republic. Money speaks louder than words, and while the public struggles to be heard, those who benefit from ignoring the people's will continue to thrive. Ultimately, it all comes down to one question: how many of our representatives actually represent us? We have seen how this works in Iraq, when in the year 2003, President Bush spoke from the podium about uranium from Africa and aluminum tubes for Saddam's nuclear program. It was a lie designed to channel popular anger after the single September in the right direction. Colin Powell demonstrated satellite images of mobile laboratories that did not exist at the UN Security Council. The world was not given a reason to doubt these statements, skillfully using the historical memory of Iraq's use of chemical weapons. But the truth is that the UN inspectors confirmed the elimination of this potential back in the 90s. The invasion on March 20, 2003 led to the death of 500,000 civilians, the destruction of infrastructure, and the creation of a power vacuum that was filled by terrorist groups. All this chaos was based on fabricated intelligence. The leaked documents, known as the Downing Street Memorandum, later confirmed that the facts were being adjusted to the already made decision on the war. The goal was not disarmament, but control of the world's second largest oil reserves and projection of American dominance. The leaders knew the truth, but they chose to send 4,700 American soldiers to their deaths for the sake of geopolitical ambitions. Young people believed that they were protecting their families, but they received folded flags and empty promises, while the architects of this lie continued to occupy high positions. Today, Americans are asking, why do they hate us? And the official response is, they hate our freedom. But no. The reality is that people hate the government for the horrors it has brought to their homes. The lies about mass destruction and links to September 1st have destroyed the lives of millions of Iraqis and undermined trust in Western institutions for decades to come. And while we were spending trillions on wars in the Middle East, another threat was brewing inside our borders. Mexican drug cartels have become military organizations with more power than many legitimate governments. Since 2000, more than 460,000 murders have been recorded in Mexico. This is a full-fledged war, where not only bandits, but also politicians become victims. In cartel-controlled Mexico, anyone who defies the system is put on death lists. Daily disappearances have become an industrial process, a tool for the psychological suppression of entire communities. Cartels use advanced tactics, improvised explosive devices, drones, and full-fledged military operations. These are no longer criminal gangs, but private armies that collect taxes and set their own laws, replacing the state. Through corruption and intimidation, they have infiltrated all government institutions, up to the offices of Interpol. In 2000, in the city of Villa Ahumada, the entire police force quit after gunmen stormed the city and killed their colleagues. When there is a superior force against you and the law cannot protect you, the choice is simple: submission or death. The economic suffocation is no less terrible. Extortion in Mexico has increased by 1,250%. Businessmen pay twice, to the state, which is powerless, and to bandits, who are merciless. On the territory of the cartels, their word is the law, deciding who lives, who does business, and who disappears. And all of this is directly related to the fentanyl epidemic in the United States, for which the Sinaloa cartel is also responsible. The situation becomes even more ominous when international politics comes into play. In 2000, the DEA seized 60 million fentanyl tablets, made from precursors shipped from China. The American committee found out that the Chinese government subsidizes the production and export of these substances through tax breaks of up to 13%, making chemicals cheaper for Mexican cartels. This is deliberately fueling the overdose crisis that has claimed the lives of 325,000 Americans in 5 years. Against the background of these figures, any statistical errors fade. But corruption doesn't always come from abroad. From 2000 to 2017, the elite Baltimore Police Department, Gun Trace, itself became an organized criminal group. Officers with extraordinary powers robbed citizens at gunpoint, stole drugs, and sold them using their badges as a cover. Sergeant Wayne Jenkins, the hero of the police, actually led a gang that planted evidence on innocent people and raided houses like special forces. All these stories are links in the same chain, from Zuckerberg's censorship and lies about Iraq to lead in Flint's water. In the year 2014, for the sake of saving $25 million, the health of 100,000 people was sacrificed. The managers appointed by the state changed the water source to the Flint River, knowing that it was aggressive to lead pipes. They deliberately refused anti-corrosion treatment for $100 a day. As a result, lead began to be leached directly into the taps of the townspeople. General Motors stopped using this water because it corroded car parts, but people kept being told that everything was fine. Flint's children suffered irreversible brain damage, while officials manipulated test data to hide the disaster. This is the face of modern government, a system where budget reports are more important than children's lives, where the truth is censored by algorithms and representatives are elected with donors' money. The question is whether we will collectively wake up before this control machine becomes absolute. The deadline is about to expire.